Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to Working Class Australia's live number 40. I am broadcasting from, once again, the land of the Jar Jar Wurrung here in Bendigo. And I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present, and future. I would also like to acknowledge that their struggle, formerly a struggle against foreign invasion, is now a part of the broader struggle against imperialism and the class struggle. So, once again, welcome everybody. I just want to, first of all, give a quick update. I'm not going to talk about Novak Djokovic again. Just a simple reason. Believe it's been one major, that circus has been one major disruption and distraction as well. Honestly, it's just turned into complete farce. I've already talked about that. I'm not going to elaborate any further. But out of that, though, I think it's what my most important thing is to get back in the focus of the real struggle. But also, too, don't forget, too, there are still a lot of people locked up there in the Park Hotel. And that refugees have been there. Some of them have been right up there to 9 years, and obviously the pressure now needs to be put on board now to the government to have them released now and let them come and live peacefully within their community and let them get on with their own lives. That's like nearly a full-on prison sentence, been locked up for that period of time. They haven't done anything. They haven't committed any crime. They haven't done anything wrong. Only the merely fact is they went to seek refuge. And unfortunately, yeah, because of our refugee policies, that both are supported by both major parties, is the dire mess that they're in now. But your support is warranted. And once again, I'm not going to go on about the complete schmozzle, circus, disaster, joke, whatever you want to call about Novak Djokovic. I think, personally, I think he's a town clown. But look, the reality is, at the end of the day, that's not the article I want to really talk about. I want to get back onto the real issues that's happening. It is related to COVID, though. Obviously, it's still a schmozzle here in Australia. I won't get into that, but it just comes to show you that the governments here federal government here cannot and are unable to handle this situation like is compared to countries like China and Cuba, be it through real lockdowns, proper ones where the population is actually looked after and their health is put as the number one priority. But also too, they get into building hospitals and doing all these other extensive things and now to actually beat a proper how to properly beat a virus such as the COVID-19. Well, just on that, there was an interesting article came up in the ABC because what's in relation to here at the moment, we've got actually a very big shortage of workers, which are actually affecting the supply into the major supermarkets and that. And obviously, people are often being diagnosed sick or potential positive. They have to isolate. And the governments are doing whatever they're in their power to try and get workers back to work. So, and if you don't believe you might have it, if you do teach a negative straight away, even though you're living with someone with COVID, you can go to work. Well, obviously, it just once again shows you that workers' health and well-being is not a priority. We're under a system where profits are in command. And that's what we live under, capitalism, imperialism, where profits are in command. This article came up on the ABC today. Australian Broadcasting Commission or Corporation is now known. It was actually written by an economic professor I know, Jim Stanford. I actually do like him. I believe he lives in Canada now, but he actually makes some very interesting contributions. And I'll just read it out to you. The headline goes, COVID supply chain crisis shows what's really at heart of the economy, healthy humans. Now, as Australians are getting a stark reminder about how value is actually created in an economy and how supply chains truly work. Probably a little bit disagree there. I don't think everyone has got that yet, but they will, hopefully. Ask chief executives where value comes from, and they will credit their own smart decisions that inflate shareholder wealth. Ask logistics experts how supply chains work, and they will wax eloquent about ports, terminals, and trucks. Politicians, meanwhile, highlight nebulous intangibles like investor confidence, enhanced presumability by their own steady hands on the tiller. The reality of value-added production and supply is much more human than all of this. It is people who are the driving force behind production, distribution, and supply. So before going any further, what it's explaining here is basically we are distracted by bourgeois economists, or even I have to admit, some bourgeois economists are acknowledging that they're even looking to Marx and that still, and quoting that capitalism and imperialism is pretty much on its last death throes. But the reality is, you hear all the garbage, the verbalage, and that in the media. It's there to deliberately deflect any attention about the real cause of the problem. So they'll say, all these things happen, and sure they do. There's lack of investment, or there's lack of this, but what they don't understand is capitalism itself. It's a capitalist mode of production, and it is the problem. It's a system of profits in command, the most irrational system that we live under. You can't plan anything any further. It's not there for human development any further. It hinders growth. Basically, it's a stagnation on human beings as well. Uh, Continuing on, I just read that. Labour, human beings getting out of bed and going to work, using their brains and brawn to produce actual goods and services, is the only thing that adds value to the free gifts we harvest from nature. It is the only thing that puts food on the supermarket shelves, cares for sick people, and teaches our children. Even the technology used to enhance workers' productivity, or sometimes even replace them, is ultimately the culmination of other human beings doing their jobs. The glorious complexity of the whole economy boils down to human beings using raw materials extracted and tools built by other human beings, working to produce goods and services. And just before I continue on any further, I mean, that's straight out of pretty much straight out of here. Karl Marx Capital. I mean, I don't expect everyone to rush out and buy a copy and read the whole thing. It's quite a good read and interesting. And I'm going too far from track. Actually, Karl Marx starts off about commodities. That's what he explains. What's a commodity and or how a product turns into a commodity from there. But it goes on to about later theory of value, the whole lot. Right for it. I also recommend Marx's work, Wages, Prices, Profit. I believe is. Wages. There was another one as well he had there, and I completely forgot that, so I do apologise. But Marx wrote some extensive material on that, and I really recommend it. But yes, look, by all means, get yourself a copy, and just bit by bit, I would highly recommend you study this with other people as well. It is an extensive read. But that was actually straight out, so pretty much there was no argument there. And I think actually what it comes down to, the age-old saying of what Marx said, labour creates value. Well, first of all, you've got your use value, and then you've got your value added by labour. For example, I make a table where I'm sitting now. It's obviously got two. It's got a use value where I can prepare food, I can use it for eating, I can do even activities such as this, live broadcasts or reading and writing or whatever I like to do with. And then on the top of that, it's obviously there's labour value created. Now, actually, I will talk a little bit about the commodity as well. Where look, if I made this table for my own use, nothing else, it's basically my own use. Explain, for my own use what I just explained before for eating and preparing food, etc. That is what we call a product. But say, for example, if I want to exchange this table, say for 4 chairs, and someone has those 4 chairs, they need this table, I need those 4 chairs. So we exchange products. That's when those products turn into a commodity. That's your basic commodity exchange, commodity and such. Obviously, we're not going to produce any material goods that are actually outright useless. That even under capitalism, it's completely stupid and that no one needs. But it was based on those two things: the use value, and then when it comes into labour value, well, how does one chair equal 4 tables? Well, it actually comes into the time we actually put into it as well, how much we're worth and how much the time we put in it. So say, for example, it took me 8 hours to make the table, and it took the other person to make 8 hours to make those 4 chairs. So that gives you that's just a very basic outline. I can get right more technical, but I could be here forever in a day and explain it. But that's actually just gives you the basic understanding of how commodities, how much they're valued in exchange before. So hence why I get. So that means the table I've made, but use value and labour time is equal to those 4 chairs with their use value and labour time as well. So that gives you gives you a basic understanding of it. And so what this article has actually so far said, that labour creates value. Once again, labour creates wealth. There's your natural wealth, well, sure, but without labour, that wealth is really no good to us until that, in such time that's something's done to it to increase it. It's not about investments. It's not about verbiage and what politicians like to come out with. And it's interesting when I've heard people say, "Oh, but bosses or the capital so they're the ones who do all the investing and create wealth." No, they don't. No, they don't. That money is worthless. All that investment's worthless without workers producing value. Simple as that. Nothing's good. So for example, something by itself that happen to be a natural thing, or there's no labour value, is basically worthless in itself. So it needs to have that labour value created in. So I'll continue on reading this. It's a good article. Well, it's not to say the best article I've read, but it's actually quite good. A narrow, distorted economic lens. The economy doesn't work if people can't work. Very true. So the first economic priority during a pandemic must be to keep people healthy enough to keep working, producing, delivering, and buying. That same political and business leaders have, from the outset of COVID-19, consistently downplayed the economic costs of mass illness. Reflects a narrow, distorted economic lens. We're now seeing the result, one of the worst public policy failures in Australia history. Well, I won't say it's a narrow-minded view of it. This is just a typical capitalist response to a capitalist problem. Right? They are unable to resolve this. And I just started out when I mentioned about China and Cuba, for two examples, are able to deal with this properly. Right? And it's a system of it's a clash between two systems, capitalism and socialism. And you can see with under a socialist system, everyone's well-being is well looked after. They probably do proper lockdowns, they've got proper rollouts of vaccines, they build hospitals, they know how to treat, everyone is a priority. Where, under our system, once again, capitalism, where profits reign supreme, it is illogical, it's irrational, our well-being is not put first. It is profit that's put first all the time. So hence why I would actually disagree that it's a narrow-minded view or a narrow view of it. I think there's a typical capitalist response there. But otherwise, it's still not a bad article. That some political and business leaders have, I know, I've just read that. The Omicron variant is tearing through Australia's workforce from healthcare and childcare to agriculture and manufacturing to transportation, logistics to emergency services, etc. Well, that's true. Yep, no argument there. The result is an unprecedented and preventable economic catastrophe. This catastrophe was visited upon us by leaders such as New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet, better known as Perrotwat, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison, the biggest idiot in the whole entire world, in particular. On the grounds, they were protecting the economy, like a mafia kingpin, extorting money. This is the kind of protection that can kill you. Well, as said, once again, that's a typical irrational, actually, I'll refer to that. It is a capitalist response, and this is what they do. And I understand about a political system. It's there to uphold and maintain the rule of capital. They have to pass policies and measures in order to protect profit. All right, and that's where vitally important. So this is what they were doing there. Although even they are, I have to admit, still pretty poor. Effects as bad as lockdowns. On a typical day in normal times, between 3% 4% of employed Australians miss work due to their own illness. Multiple reports from New South Wales indicate up to half of workers are now absent due to COVID because they contracted it or were exposed to it or must care for someone, like children barred from childcare, because of it. With infections still spreading, this will get worse in the days ahead. Very true. Staffing shortages have left hospitals in chaos, supermarket shelves empty, supply chains paralysed. ANZ Bank data, for example, shows economic activity in Sydney has fallen to a level lower than the worst lockdowns. And there's a graph there. I can't show up there. I don't know how to do that yet, but certainly there's the evidence. If relaxing health restrictions in December, as Omicron was already spreading, was motivated by the desire to boost the economy, this is an own goal for the history books. Well, it's actually a recipe for disaster. I have stated this before. This is all spread. We're sitting on a time bomb now. I'm not going to get into get into a debate about COVID and the effects and everything. We all know the information's there. Make up your own mind. But look, the reality is this is where we're at, and it's turning into a disaster. But also too, not just for health-wise for all us working class people, but also keeping in mind the economic disasters for all of us as well. Because guess who's going to be paying for all this? People like yourselves and myself and everything else in the future, and younger generations. There'll be a huge amount of debt that has to be paid. Now, the response to Omicron ravaging labour supply is to relax isolation requirements for workers who have contracted or been exposed to COVID-19. The first step was to shift the goalposts on test, trace, isolate and quarantine arrangements by redefining close contact. And I like how that was all redefined. All of a sudden, they're now coming in what they're regarding now as close contact. I think I'm led to believe at about 4 hours or more. I mean, if this is a super spreader, well, wouldn't it actually spread even quicker? What if someone sneezes and you actually inhale that like you can with the flu? I mean, come on. And then they're saying, oh, no, you weren't around for 4 hours, so you're not in a high tide around with an infected person, so you're not at risk. It just comes to show you, once again, our health and safety is not a priority. Profits reign supreme. The first step, on December 29, the Prime Minister said it was important to move to a new definition that enables Australia to keep moving, for people to get on with their lives. The next day, National Cabinet approved a definition such that only individuals having spent at least 4 hours indoors with a COVID-19 infected person need to isolate. Australians certainly want supply chains to keep moving. That won't happen by simply pretending someone with 3 hours and 59 minutes of face-to-face indoor contact with Omicron is safe. Putting asymptomatic but exposed and potentially infected people back to work will only accelerate the spread. Once again, a capitalist solution to a capitalist problem. They cannot resolve this. Like with any big issues we're facing now, from climate, economic catastrophe, etc., 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 they cannot. It is the system we live under. Capitalism, imperialism. It's not a policy. It is not a policy. It's a system we are under. And I'll emphasise this: profits are in command, and all that wealth has been concentrated into fewer hands on a worldwide scale. And this is the system we are under, and they are incapable of resolving anything. I shall continue. For critical workers in essential, I'll continue. The second step has been reduce the isolation period for those who pass this tougher close contact test. At its December 30 meeting, National Cabinet agreed to a standard isolation period of 7 days, in brackets 10 days in South Australia, down from 14 days. For critical workers in essential services, including food and logistics, the New South Wales and Queensland governments have gone even further, allowing employers to call them back to work so long as they are asymptomatic. Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. This follows a US precedent, despite scientific evidence indicating contagion commonly lasts longer than 5 days. Employers will use the change to pressure exposed and even sick workers to return to work, risking their own health, colleagues, customers, and inevitably spreading the virus further. Copying US COVID protocols only guarantees US-style infection rates. In fact, since January 5th, Australian 7-day rolling average infections per million now exceed that of the US. From one of the best COVID responses in the world to one of the worst, Australia has snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Very true. It's not too late to limit the carnage. The idea that health considerations had to be balanced with economic interests was always a false dichotomy. A healthy economy requires healthy workers and healthy consumers. Fair enough. The Omicron surge has created an economic emergency that will be difficult to endure. But it is not too late to limit further avoidable contagion. Infection prevention practices, and brackets including mask capacity limits, prohibitions on group indoor activities, PPE, and distancing in workplaces, and free accessible rapid tests must be restored and enforced. Income supports for workers who stay home must be restored. Staffing strategies need to emphasise steady, secure jobs rather than outsourcing and gig arrangements which have facilitated contagion. Above all, our policymakers need to remember the economy is composed of human beings and refocus their attention on keeping people healthy. Protecting people is the only thing that can protect the economy. End of that article. Now, overall, not a bad article. A lot of aspects some good, and actually some of it was quite comical when I was reading. For it was like when Jim Stanford, he was describing what the capitalist response is, and the politicians. It was like reading something out of the Ragged Trousers of the Philanthropist. It was just so Dixon, it's not funny, and I think it, this is what they come up with, and I think actually ordering sick workers back to work, or even possible sick workers back to work, is a crime. Be perfectly honest with you. We need a really good working class solution to it. I mean, we're not here about saving capitalism anyway. Capitalism can go F itself. It's a cancer, it's a strain on human development and progress even further. It's destroying the planet. Everything's linked. I mean, we have COVID, we have climate change, catastrophic climate change, we've got economic disaster, wars, you name it, instability, you name it, and all other social ills, you name it, and because of the system we live under. And I think it's about time we need to have that revolutionary thinking back in our society again. And that's why it's quite fundamentally important. We need to get that socialist education out there and develop that further. And that's also, too, why myself and a number of other comrades, and also, this is actually a speak to all Australian comrades now. Watch this, and please spread the word that we are getting together, a think tank. So the same as the CPI, but we'll obviously have it a little bit, it'll all be pertaining to Australian conditions, probably have a different name, but still the same principle, everything else. So we'll be looking to doing that. We're in the process of developing something like that. But if you want to join on with us, we'll be not only greatly appreciate it, but we obviously need to build this further. We need and put that message out that we need to get out of the movement and get to the masses, and put these key points out, such as we need a government of action that fights for working families. Government of action that fights for working families. And one of the other points there, we need a proper, strong health system where hospitals are rebuilt again, and it all comes under public ownership and control as well, where our health is now also guaranteed. We're working on that at the moment to present, but to look, if anyone's got any suggestions, feel free to send me a message as well. I'll be greatly appreciated. And just regarding about that article, I put the link in there in the comments section. But what I'll do, I'll edit this afterwards, and I'll make sure that proper link to that article. By all means, feel free to use it to have our own formal discussion around the place. But we do need to actually get out there and really get into the masses, because this is vitally important. We need to get a working class solution to this whole scenario, because this is the problem when we leave it up to the capitalist system to try and leave it up to the respective governments of the capitalist system to resolve our issues, because they're not being resolved. Fancy trying to send a sick worker back to work, even the one that might not show any symptoms, back to work. And if this variant or if COVID-19 evolves even further or develops a new strain, I mean, God knows what could happen. And this is all what it came down to in the first place. We had the mandates, about all these other things that put in place. It's all about trying to generate wealth again, and that's all it came down to, and not about trying to stop this virus dead in its tracks, which should have been the key objective from the outset. But the fact is, to rely on the current political system to do something, will either require mass ground pressure, or we need to get matters into our own controls. And I think, no, we should defy some of these orders at times. I dare to say this and that. Said, no, we're refusing to go to work. Simple reason, we want our safety and health guaranteed. Our forebears didn't fight for health and safety for nothing. They were out for weeks and months on ends of our work to fight for basic health and safety at work, and we enjoy that today. And there's a lot more of the conditions we want in that. We need to actually take that. We need to take control of the agenda and need to put the pressure up there and fight for a government that will fight for working families. Look, comrades, I wanted to actually emphasise that tonight. This afternoon. As I said, I will try and endeavour to, when I re-edit this video, I will put the link back in the descriptions below. But also too, in the descriptions below, currently I have the various links to everyone. Other YouTube commentators, and also like a big shout out to Comrade Pinko. He actually does his own YouTube commentary as well. Please like and subscribe to his channel and spread far and wide. Invite everyone along and give him all the support in the world. He certainly needs it. He's a comrade, and he's obviously in the same fight like with everybody else here. And also too, I've got many others there. I've got Ewoks Unhinged. I do apologise. Look, if anyone for the comrades from Ewoks Unhinged are watching this, I do apologise. I didn't jump on board yesterday. I was actually doing a few things around the place, and I was listening to it, making a few comments to it. But I'm led to believe they're trying over the next 2 weeks. I will be going live with Ewoks on Unhinged on their channel, and as usual, every weekend, myself and Dust James, we do working class result. We also broadcast working class revolt, not result. It will be 12 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So our time on Sunday, every Sunday at the moment, and we're obviously continuing on our study as well of the foundations of Leninism. We'll also the other day as well. There's other things that's happening around the place. I'm led to believe Caleb Morgan has announced the CPI will be having their national conference in mid-year, I think around about June or July, in Chicago this year. Sorry, I'm going to see if I can email him up. It'd be good if we can have an Australian contingent and attend to it, depending on COVID travel, not weather permitting, but yeah, restrictions are travelling as well. Another announcement as well, just keep a reminder, the Julian Assange vigil is on this afternoon. The one in Melbourne, it's outside Flinders Street Station at 6 p.m. It goes for roughly about an hour. Look, we ask, I think that's that campaign warrants everyone's support. I think Julian Assange did a fantastic job in journalism and exposing what the whole imperialist lies were about Iraq and everywhere else. And certainly, I think where he is still locked up in Belmarsh prison, his condition's not very good at all. But I think we do need to, here in Australia, to put that pressure back on the federal government, pull their finger out and bring him back here to Australia and let him get on with his own life, because he does need to go for that, obviously. But without that, well, it'd be a great shame if he does get extradited to the US and he is trialled and sent to prison for a very long time. So we need to, the fight hasn't over yet. I'm led to believe there is another vigil in Sydney at about the same time as well. I think that's at Town Hall. Don't quote me. I'm not too sure. Probably led to believe there's also Brisbane and Adelaide and possibly Hobart. I'm not too sure about Darwin and Perth. But if there isn't, how about actually linking up with a few people? And you don't need too much. Maybe buy some Colico and put the paint on there with hashtag free Julian Assange. And obviously, yeah, you can get engaged with people that way, discuss what you're trying to do. I don't think I need to emphasise the importance of that campaign as well. So I'll be down in Melbourne this afternoon. Be looking forward to those Melbourne comrades, catch up with a few of them as well. And I think I'll leave it at that for today. Look, thank you once again. I greatly appreciate you tuning in. Look, please hit the like button. Please share far and wide. I greatly appreciate it. And I will also encourage people, if they wish to be able to do an interview or wish to come on the show, feel free to do so. We'll also, before I go, one more announcement. We will be resuming We Are the Builders Australia at the end of the month. I still need to catch up with Helen and Nate and any others as well, wishing what subject matter we'll be discussing and studying next. So don't watch this space. We will be putting that out as well. But once again, look, thank you very much, comrades. I really appreciate it. Once again, well, guys, keep up the great work. The struggle, we've got an intense struggle ahead of us. 2022, yes, it's going to be an exciting year, but as Lennon correctly pointed out, the struggle is a long and tedious one. I just want to emphasise on that. Workers of all countries unite. Thank you very much, comrades.